Hello and welcome to the Scottish Football Show. Top flight action still on hiatus, but Scottish football never stops. So coming up on today's show, we'll look at the impact Scottish-based players have made at the World Cup, especially Australia. Mad Rab is back in Scottish football. Yes, Davy Robertson comes to Peterhead, and things get feisty on Hearts mid-season break with a full-blown rammy. Come on! Yes, I am your host, Andrew Slaven, and joining me today in a very attacking front three are East Kilbride's Queen of Football. She still hasn't had a burger, but at least she's the super producer for West Ham United. Hello, Laura Brannan. Really?
Hello.
No burger?
No hamburger or cheeseburger, but I do like chicken burgers.
Oh, God. Oh, well, anyway, people who love burgers are in Australia. Paisley Powell, Findlay Marks, you make some football films as well. Hello, mate.
Hey, mate, how you doing? Yeah, I can confirm I'm a massive fan of beef burgers, as my waistline will attest to.
Good. How is it in Melbourne? Sunny?
Not as sunny today. It was boiling hot the other day, though, 34, but now it's dropped back to about 15 degrees. So it's good to get a bit of weather chat on. I feel like I'm on a phone call to my mum and dad back home. Literally always the first question ahead of how are you? It's what's the weather like today?
Well, look, we're slap bang in the middle with the World Cup. We're into the knockout rounds now. The drama has been pretty good, but we'll speak about that in a wee bit because we've got loads going on, plenty of weird and wonderful things going on in Scottish football. So what's caught your attention this week, Laura?
I don't think we can start anywhere else except for Hearts and their friendly that they've had during their mid-season break over in Malaga. So they were coming up against Almeria and they were losing 1-0 at the time. And I think it was Alex Cochrane was sent off along with one of the Almeria players as well. Hold on a second. Robbie Neilson called this a standard tackle and then proceeded to describe it as all hell broke loose because it wasn't just your normal Barney, right? It wasn't just, handbags at the dugout. The game got called off. Yeah. This is incredible. So, yeah, the game got abandoned because of this fight. It's a mid-season friendly.
Have you guys actually seen the incident?
I have.
Yeah.
The thing that made it even more bizarre is the fact that for some reason the only way that it's appeared on Twitter for everybody to see it, what looks to be like, I think it's a Filipino Twitch streamer is like commentating on it, and I'm like, this just adds to the level of mentalness going on. But it looked like, to me, it didn't look like a tackle. It's like he's kind of put a foot in or an elbow in just after the ball's been played. So it's nothing you don't see every week, but it's not strictly kosher. But then the ball that the defender that the ball's played to basically doesn't try and trap the ball. He just runs straight at Alex Cochrane and kind of tries to put the nut on him, and then that's where it all goes a bit crazy.
There was about 60 people on the pitch as well, wasn't there?
All the benches were up and everything. It just, because it was the tackle that instigated it, I don't think was that bad. It was more the reaction of the Almeria players. But I think Robbie Neilson, the reason they decided to call it off was that it was tasty anyway, like there were tackles flying in, and he's like, well, we've already got half our squad injured, so what's the point in playing on and risking potential further injuries? So it just made sense to cam it. But yeah, who knew there was needle between Hearts and Almeria?
That's a great derby.
I wish we could turn around and say, like, we got that that Asian woman on to get her angle on what she thought. But yeah, really bizarre thing to see all that.
The other thing I've seen this week is, have you seen a T-shirt that Morton are promoting? So they've drawn Celtic in the fourth round of the Scottish Cup in January, and it was about 10 years ago, 9-10 years ago, they knocked Celtic out of the same round in the competition, and it was Dougie Imrie that hit the penalty that won the game. But this T-shirt, they've got, basically, it's like a Fruit of the Loom T-shirt and one kind of landscape photo, and somebody has, your budget graphic designer has just went, here's your photo, and taken it to like the Lotto Snappy Snaps shop and said, can you slap that photo on my £2 white T-shirt, please? And it is blasted across the front of the chest of the T-shirt. And they're selling this to commemorate that win and to look forward to the next game against Celtic. The design levels are off the charts here.
How much is it?
They're selling it for £15, but Laura's absolutely right. You could do it yourself, honestly, for about £3.
I think I used to make T-shirts like this when I was like 10 years old, like with my favourite boy band on the front and stuff. I mean, this is extreme. It's ridiculous.
What was your favourite boy band, Laura?
Oh, obviously Westlife. Come on.
Westlife?
Yeah.
Interesting. The other story as well is Inverness basically telling their fans not to travel to Hamilton for their Challenge Cup game at the weekend. They've admitted they're going to field what is essentially an under-18 team because most of the first teamers are injured. So yeah, most of the team that's going to play Hamilton are still at school, and they're also away at Hamilton the following week as well, which seems a bit brutal.
Yeah, I don't know if they asked to get it postponed and weren't allowed because they can technically field players, not experienced players, mind you, but the fact that they're going twice, like in a week, to Hamilton, and it's what, like about 300 odd miles one way or something, or I don't know, I've not calculated exactly, but to do that trip to watch your under-18 side, they've basically said, please don't travel, or at least be aware that when you travel, you're not going to see the players you expect to see. Fair play for admitting it. I'd be interested to see what the crowd is on Saturday anyway. Fair play to the ones that do actually travel.
Celtic have signed Canada right back Alistair Johnston from Montreal on a 5-year contract. He's going to be Celtic's second signing of the January window. Defender Yuki Kobayashi joining as well from Vissel Kobe. Interestingly, I don't know if you guys seen this, but Alistair Johnston was named in the Qatar World Cup's worst 11 of the group stage. Not the best. Not
That's
the best.
A shame.
Well, I mean, take it with a pinch of salt as well, though, because Australia's Matthew Leckie was also named in that, and he scored the goal that took them through the group stage. So
yeah, Ronaldo's also in it as well, to be fair.
I mean, to be fair, he's also from one of the only 2 teams that didn't get a single point in the tournament, so it's probably easy for these people to look at these 2 teams and pick out someone like that. I'm not going to read too much into it.
No, of course not. The game that I did see against Belgium, he looked pretty excellent, to be honest. And the other thing as well is it begs the question if Juranovic, who is performing well for Croatia at the moment, Celtic might be entertaining offers for him this January. So Johnston obviously being potential backup there. Michael Beale as well thinks that his Rangers team, is just as good as Celtic's squad, Finn.
Yeah, I don't really know if anybody should be expecting him to see anything else. He's not going to come in and be like, oh yeah, they're all dross, we're miles behind, I really need loads of investment. Like, it's not the best thing to do with going on.
Set his stall out though.
Yeah, exactly. There were a couple of interesting things that came out of his press conference, but yeah, time will tell. What is quite good is just for the narrative for the second half of the season, it's actually quite good to have, a brand new manager coming in essentially just for the second half of the season, because there wasn't much of a competition, I don't think, going on in the first half of the season between the top 2 sides. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the second half of the season.
Time will tell, says the fence sitter Finn. Motherwell have launched a new third kit. Laura, what can you tell us about this?
So the profits from every kit sold is going to be split between 4 different charities. And it's all charities that support mental health, the fight against suicide, which, as I've always harped on about on this show, is how much work Motherwell do to fight suicide and the problems that especially a town like Motherwell have. So it's this Darkness to Light Luminous kit. It's I think it's 25 years since they last had one similar to this in the late 90s. It's really nice. It's a really smart kit. I'm a big fan of black kits in general, and even more a fan of luminous colours mixing with them. So big fan of how it looks. But they've also got the Speak Up, Speak Out, Be Heard slogan sewn into the neckline and the 4 different helplines on the waist. So yeah, it's a really good kind of charitable cause that looks nice and has a purpose.
It's really nice.
It's nicely done because the way they launched it was they got some of their fans involved as well. So instead of getting players to model it, they got some of their fans from their ultra section, the boys, and they took them around Motherwell and did it around the stadium as well and got them wearing the kit. And it's a message that group of supporters especially have really fought hard over the years to really send out to everyone else, because they themselves have had friends from their group who commit suicide themselves. So it's a cause deep from their heart, and it's really nice to see the club kind of get the fans to represent it for a change instead of just the players, because that's the kind of cliche normal way of doing it.
It's an absolutely cracking kit. Are there plans to wear it like over the Christmas period then, Laura? Do you know? I'm
absolutely none the wiser actually, but I'm hoping so. I'm going to actually get back up for one of their games, so wouldn't be against them wearing it for one of them. Be nice.
To take, swings it in, it's towards Sneddon, he gets it, and it's like, oh my God!
Oh my goodness! What a goal from Jamie Sneddon. Brannan lands it right on his head. And Jamie Sneddon with the flicked header into the corner. And Thistle have the latest of late equalisers. And Jamie Sneddon is the scorer. Unbelievable. My word, I've seen it all now.
Right, we'll kick things off in the Championship. What an absolute dramatic equaliser at Cove Rangers for the visitors, Partick Thistle. Jamie Sneddon, the goalkeeper, popping up in the 95th minute.
It was absolutely incredible. I quite liked what Ian McCall said after the game, because he was very honest. He basically said quite resolutely, it was like very Scottish football da. He's just like, I've been in football for 40 years. I've never seen a goalkeeper score a goal. He's like, I don't like it. I never tell my goalies to go up for it. But obviously then he said, but I was delighted when Jamie put it away. As you would be. A 95th minute equaliser is just great anyway, but when it's your keeper, they're quite impressive. I mean, I can't remember the last time a goalkeeper scored a goal in Scottish football. I mean, Xander Clark obviously got the famous assist against Rangers in the Scottish Cup a few years ago. But yeah, I can't remember the last time a goalie scored in Scottish football.
Yeah, honestly, couldn't tell you myself.
It's just it's a dream finish. That it's the classic Hollywood ending. You always see it and it never ever happens. It's absolutely class.
It still ended 1-1, Laura. Come on, get that Hollywood out of your head.
True, but you know, the way they were probably feeling at that stage, they were going to take it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they won their last game, but before that they'd been on a miserable run. So things may be turning around for Partick Thistle. What about Ayr United? Still at the top of the table, a 2-0 win against Raith Rovers.
They've now won 9 games this season, right? It took them 36 games to achieve that last season. Wow. And they've done it this year in 17. They're doing so well. I know when we spoke to Graham Matthew earlier in the season, it was very much like, take it with a pinch of salt. We're doing really well. We've had a good start, but no one's getting carried away. No one's thinking about moving up into the Premiership. But it's becoming more of a reality now because they're getting to the Christmas period, still sitting top of the table. I heard one of the players get interviewed after the game on Saturday on the radio, and he was talking about how it was the team night out. They were having their Christmas party straight after the game, and you could just hear the kind of the pure relief and happiness of they'd got to this stage of the season. This must have been a massive landmark for them to kind of get to Christmas time. There's fans still talking about they're 10 points from safety, and it's that sort of default negativity that we have as just Scottish people. We've always got to look down before we can look up, and they're so close to getting over that line. And then I think after that, they can probably start to dream and make it more of a reality.
Yeah, Dundee are still just behind them, so that reality is still shared.
They've got them actually on the 23rd of December. That is going to be an absolutely class game to go into Christmas.
It'll be some atmosphere for sure.
We've said it so many times on the podcast, and we've had, you and Booth Robertson on a number of times talking about the Championship, how good and how tight a league it is. Because at the moment, you've got Ayr top on 32 points. Morton are only 3 points behind in 4th place on 29 points. So you've got 3 points separating the top 4 teams. And we've seen already this season, Partick Thistle were absolutely flying at the start of the season, and they've dropped to mid-table at the moment. And Dundee kind of struggled in the initial bits, and now they're right up the top, pushing just a point off the top. So it's a fantastic division. And yeah, as you're saying, Laura, some fantastic fixtures coming up over the next couple of weeks.
Well, yeah, I mean, Dundee have won 4 in a row. Themselves and Greenock Morton probably the form sides in the division at the moment. But interestingly, Morton closely linked with Lee Griffiths, bringing him back to Scottish football. I know he's training with Livingston, but Davy Martindale basically said that he can't afford Lee Griffiths' wages. I have no idea what they could be, but I don't know how Morton could afford it. But maybe if it was just kind of a half-season deal, maybe it would be a little bit different. But if Morton signed Lee Griffiths, my God, that division gets even wilder. But can't say the same for Hamilton, who are rock bottom. They lost 4-0 to Queen's Park, who are doing very, very well. But they're 2 points adrift of Arbroath. And to think how it wasn't that long ago they were in the Premiership. If they went down to League One, I mean, so many sides just seem to drop down to League One that just shouldn't, like your Dunfermlines and your Falkirks. If Hamilton go down there, you worry for their infrastructure. What is actually going on there?
It's kind of like when Brecon went down and just kept going and kept going. You kind of fear for just what's going on right now and when's it going to stop?
But Hamilton had such a history with bringing so many young players through. It felt like Championship was their level. And they're going down from the Premiership after squeaking into safety on the final days and stuff like that. Felt like Championship, they could just maybe enjoy themselves a bit more, but Really bad news for Hamilton Accies fans at the moment.
They're just on such a dismal run at the moment. I think they haven't won in their last 10 matches. Their last victory was against Cali Thistle on the 18th of October. And since then, they've only picked up 1 point, which was a 4-4 draw with Cove Rangers. But of the last 10 matches, it's 9 defeats and 1 draw. And it's abysmal. And you look at some of the games they've got coming up again, they're in a pretty sticky place. And if they can't find a way to turn that around in the new year, I think, we could be seeing Hamilton dropping down another division, which, as you say, could lead to some pretty dire consequences.
Well, we're going to do that before they do, because in League One, weirdly, only 2 wins at the weekend. Starting with Dunfermline, they missed the chance to open the gap at the top. They drew with the mighty Queen of the South 1-1, but Falkirk also stumbled to a 1-1 draw at home to Airdrie. Edinburgh moved up to second spot with a 2-0 win over Clyde, and Clyde themselves without a win in 14 matches. And the big story really before the weekend was that Davy Robertson is back in Scottish football. You may remember Davy Robertson playing for Rangers in the 90s, Aberdeen before that, and went down to Leeds. But he was also, I don't know if any of you saw the documentary of him when he took charge at Real Kashmiri in India. Did you see this documentary?
It was absolutely fabulous. It's just so interesting. And I think he came across really well as well. And it's just my favourite thing, always thinking of, he's from the northeast and he's still got quite a strong accent. So I'd be like, if other Scots or other people in the UK might struggle with how you speak, then I don't know how people in that part of the world are going to understand you. But he did really well over there, and I've just always got this. I would always view it positively for coaches that want to go abroad, regardless of the level, because just to have that different experience, to learn something new, put yourself in an outside of your comfort zone to try and learn new things, and then bring that back to if you're coaching in Scotland or somewhere else. So it'll be interesting to see how he does. He's taken over from Jim McInally as well, who was, I think, the longest serving manager in the Scottish leagues. He'd been at Peterhead for a long time, over a decade. And they're not a club that tend to change things too often. So he hopefully will be at Peterhead doing well for a long time.
Where can I watch this documentary? Because this sounds really good.
It was on BBC iPlayer. And it's funny how, like, Finn talks about going to new places and learning things. If you watch this documentary, it looks like he's trying to learn, or he's certainly learning all of the wrong things to do, because he kicks things around, he swears at everyone, he says this is a disgrace, and it's hilarious because he expects a level and a standard. It's more him teaching others what a football team should be. It's brilliant. It's such a good watch. But I did forget to mention that he'd taken the Peterhead job. I just kind of introduced him as this mad character. But thank you, Finn, for doing that. It didn't start well for him, though, because it was a 3-0 defeat to Kelty Hearts, who were the only other side to win in League One at the weekend. But it'll be interesting to see the progress of Robertson and Peterhead, because they are struggling.
Just kind of much in the same way that we were just talking about Hamilton being a team that flirts between the Championship and the top flight. I feel like kind of Peterhead's place is always going to be this way, that kind of flirts between League One and League Two. I think a lot of times they've proven themselves to be at the top end of League Two and always pushing and sometimes getting out of it, but then they seem to struggle once they go that one step above.
Yeah, definitely. Right, to League Two now. Dumbarton, unbeaten in 6, and they edged another point ahead at the top of the League Two with a 1-1 draw against Bonnyrigg Rose. The Suns had Stranraer to thank after they beat Stirling Albion 3-1, which meant that Albion are now 4 points behind the league leaders, and Stranraer moved up to 4th in the table as well. Stirling were going great guns in League Two, but that's 2 defeats in their last 3, so they are slipping up big time. Forfar Athletics still bottom of League Two, not looking good for them.
We can't be having that, mate. You better get your finger out alright and make sure that you get the results.
Now, Australia may have bowed out of the World Cup at the weekend at the hands of Argentina, but they were by far one of the best success stories of the group stages. Progressing to the knockouts of a World Cup for only the second time in their history, their squad was full of SPFL-based players and even a few Scottish-born boys as well. Keanu Bacchus from St Mirren, Aaron Moy from Celtic and Aziz Behic from Dundee United, to name just a few, were in the side that narrowly lost out 2-1 to Messi and co in the last 16. A couple of days before the match, Finn and Laura caught up with Copa 90's Ellie Mengem, who was based over in Melbourne for the tournament, reporting for national broadcast channel SBS. They discuss Scotland, the Socceroos, and much more.
Joined in the studio now by Ellie Mengem, former colleagues as well at Copa 90.
Mm-hmm.
Ellie is probably the person that enjoys international football even more than our own Laura Brannan. Would you say that's fair, Laura?
No, I actually Laura at least has one team. Well, actually, I've got the Socceroos, but with what Laura's gone through, that heartache, I've seen it firsthand. I actually got to give it to Laura for that one. Like, I haven't been through the pain that she has.
I just like having a kindred spirit. No one really understands that how big international football is compared to domestic football for me, but Ellie does, and it's nice to know that there's somebody out there that is as sane as me.
I remember I really warmed to Laura when one day I said, "Oh, by the way, what's your club?" She said, "I don't really have a club. I like international football." And my heart just went, finally, one of us. I found another one. Yes, they exist. I'm not mental. Yeah, so that was great.
Have you been enjoying the World Cup broadly? Maybe more, we'll just talk about the footballing perspective rather than a bit of the circus going on around the side. But has it been an enjoyable spectacle?
Yeah, it's like, because, this has been 4.5 years, so it's like an extra 6 months to remind you. I feel like every World Cup comes past and it reminds you how much you're like, oh, I forgot how fun this is. 3 or this time 4 games a day. Your whole evenings are filled. The colours, just the colours of the jerseys. It's like the scenes now that we can share everything through the internet. It's like I've just adored it. And even though the games are in Australia, I forgot how hard this is. Like I forgot just how hard this is. Australia doing what they've done has helped obviously as well.
Ellie, what are you actually doing during the World Cup? What are you working on?
So I'm back in Australia to work for my beloved and Australia's beloved SBS, which for people who don't know is kind of like our second/alternative state broadcaster. We've got our BBC, which is the ABC, but then you've got SBS, which started in late 70s, early 80s as basically a TV channel for migrants. It just was news services, and then they basically had to fill in time overnight. And of course, European football's on. No one liked it back then. They got it cheap, and it became the soccer channel, as they say down here. And basically, it's the channel that converted me to football, not just football, but world movies, world news. And I've been obsessed with them since I was about 12. And I was lying in bed one night and realised it's summer, World Cup in Australia. It might be SBS's last World Cup because football's got so popular, all the big channels are buying it. And it's like, genuinely, it felt like a duty that after everything football's given me, of which I learnt through SBS, I want to give back and just give my words and my effort and my work to SBS. And I'm down here and it's just gone mad. We've qualified out of the group. Some of my monologues and reports have gone viral amongst 8,000 people at 3 a.m. in Fed Square. I've never had a response like this to almost anything. So it's just all has felt so right. And that's why I'm back here.
That must be weird because obviously in your role at Copa 90, it was a case of getting right in amongst it all at Russia, for example, like in amongst the stadiums and the fans. Whereas when we worked at Copa together in 2018, it was me that was going to countries in the base of where the fans were, like for example in Croatia. That's right. In France.
Croatia, I remember that. So you were in Croatia for the semi-final?
Yeah, it was the quarter-final. So it was a game they beat Russia on penalties to set up the semi-final against England.
That's right.
So
for that.
I know what you're like. I mean, I've seen the scenes. The scenes in Australia, like at 3 o'clock in the morning, look incredible. So I know exactly how that must feel. But like what is it actually like? Because it looks class. The scenes are going out.
You just don't believe it. Like the crazy thing is, it doesn't get full till about an hour before, and you're like, oh, no one's turning up this time. I've done 2 of them, and both times, one was at Friday night 9 p.m. Sorry, Saturday night 9 p.m. So that had to turn up. But even then, people only rocked up at 8, and then before you know it, it's full. When we scored against Tunisia, I genuinely turned to my cam up and said, this is as mad as Serbia. There were flares flying left, right and centre, people jumping over each other, bodies flying. They put these cages ahead so people can get on the stage at the front of Federation Square. For people who don't know Federation Square, it's like Melbourne's kind of Trafalgar Square. It's like the place where everyone kind of convenes when there's a big event on. It's the dead centre of the city. And it's always had a tradition. Actually, I think the first ever congregation of people properly was when we qualified for the 2005 World Cup, the first time in 32 years. So it's always had this role as kind of like the place fans congregate, but it really has taken on that during this tournament. And then I can't explain. It's like it's just like it's a European city. People are just so into it, and it's just a vibe of everyone just knows we've waited 4 years for this. We don't care the hours, and that's the thing. It's like in Europe, it's easy. Morning, midday, nighttime. You try 3 a.m. for the second game, have 5,000, 8,000 people there, and then obviously the next game is going to be at 6 a.m.
Have you? Because it's been incredible watching it, and it's not just in Australia. I think it's worldwide. The scenes in Fed Square are kind of going viral. We've seen it all. The supporters going crazy, flares being ripped, smoke grenades and things going off. To you, does it kind of signify a bit of a sea change in the way that Australians see football, or as they call it soccer? Because it's never really been anywhere close to being the most popular sport. But have you seen that popularity change in your time?
So the thing is, this has happened every year, maybe not as mad as this year because we haven't had the results, but every 4 years we have these congregations, and I feel like every 4 years they get a bit bigger. So it's not like it's a revolution. It's generation on generation building bigger and setting in a culture. I've come to the realization football, I thought there was one point it could be the biggest. It will never be the biggest in terms of the fabric of the culture has been set in stone. That's what it is in Victoria, South Australia and West Australia. AFL is the core fabric of winter sports, and that's how it is. The northeastern states, New South Wales and Queensland, it's rugby. Yeah. But and then obviously during summertime it's kind of cricket. But football is like this. It's like the glue in between all of the other ones, right? So it's like, and what people are realizing is AFL. You love your AFL and rugby because of your family and your history. You love your cricket because it's summer. But football is like the best of all of it with the atmosphere, and again through younger generations, beginning with mine, who were 15 in 2006, they're starting to break out and fall in love with, like, it's that generation that's really, really fallen for it hard. I feel like no one's over my age in these crowds. Not no one, I shouldn't say that. There's a lot of older people, but it's not so much that it's like this one's made people realise. It's like 06 made people realise, and since then every generation's adding to that. So I was in the crowd, and the majority of the crowd were 20. They started going about 8 years ago, let's say 8 to 4 years ago. So for me, it's just like a building block. Every 4 years, it is the number one thing that converts fans. And then we've got to get them into the A-League, and that's happening as well. That's a story in itself. But no, I don't think it's like a... I think it's just like a building block. Every 4 years, it confirms it, gets another 100,000 into it, and that's the role it's playing. Because once you find... I always say this, it's like so many Aussies, they're like, yeah, I'm just not into football. It's like, it's not that you're not into football, you just don't realise what football is. You have this idea of what football is because it's on at really odd times and it's kind of foreign to you, and you've been... the truth is force-fed these other sports. But once you actually... Because I come from an AFL background. Once you understand that football gives you what all those other sports want on steroids, for both good reasons and bad reasons, but the number one reason is the feeling of being part of something and having where you come from represented. It's just all of that on such a bigger level. You know what I mean? I that's it for me.
And do you feel that, so this is the 5th consecutive World Cup that Australia have qualified for. The only World Cup they'd previously qualified for was 1974. Do you feel that the kind of continued success of making it to the world's biggest stage is part of the reason that it's helped grow the game? Do you think it would have grown as much if Australia hadn't been as successful?
But then there is a great point. Seb Hassett is a fantastic ex-journalist for the Sydney Morning Herald for football. He said to me like how the old days, it was like a crack cocaine high of like... would just miss out in the most controversial circumstances. 97, 02, last-minute goals in second leg aggregates. Then 06, one of the maddest qualification stories of all time. But then after that, we've just made it every time pretty safely, albeit the last time penalty, but still it felt safer than usual. And what that is he's gone like, we've gone from these crack cocaine highs and lows that just like exemplified the emotional overload of football to like this kind of mellow marijuana high where it's just like, yeah, we'll make it. So it's like people aren't as emotionally invested because it doesn't feel like, oh, if we miss out, well, we're going to miss out. And it does. It feels like even if we do miss out, it's like, oh, we've made the last 3 or 4, now 5. It's not like, for Scotland, like I can't even imagine what playoffs are like for you because you're like, I've waited so long. We don't have that anymore. Once that goes, it doesn't feel like there's as much, like, is collateral the term? Like, it doesn't feel like there's much at stake. It's like, yeah, we've had the last 5. It's in 2002 and 98 and even 06, it was like, I can't go another 4 years. 4 years. The reality is I probably could go another 4 years, but so that's kind of, I think, affected it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, yeah. And you're making reference there as well to Scotland. Like, I'm sure Laura can mention as well, like just how tense, not just playoffs, Laura, it's any Scotland game is.
Absolutely any game.
Just it's fraught with nerves and tension. Obviously, because you're Australian, but there are quite strong connections. We're a Scottish football podcast. There are quite strong connections to Scotland and even the Scotland national team with Australia at this World Cup. Of all the teams at the World Cup, Australia have the most amount of SPL-based players. Yeah. So there's 6 Australians that are playing in the Scottish top flight at the moment. And of that as well, in the Australia squad, we've actually got 2 Scots-born players in the squad. There were 3. Obviously, Martin Boyle got injured just before the tournament. But Jason Cummings, and can we just talk about Harry Souttar as well?
It's unbelievable. I had heard good things, but he has just been something else. So what's his? I don't know. I got to be honest. I don't actually know what's his story. So his brother plays, I know, for Scotland.
Yeah.
And so Suda, is he like was it Cummins who had never been to Australia until he moved to the Mariners?
Yes.
So Suda.
So these two boys, it's well, to me it's quite controversial because I think everyone kind of knows how I kind of feel about players switching nationalities.
Yeah. I relatively agree. So
I've always said that, look, especially in the changing times with like how the world is going and stuff, nobody is just black and white in terms of their nationality. I understand that, but I've always said that when a player signs their first pro contract, they should state then what their nationality is and stick to it. And then there's no debate and there's no switch over and everything. But the controversial thing with these boys are they've all represented Scotland. They've all played for Scotland at some level. Jason Cummings has literally played for the first team, just not a competitive match.
In friendly, so he never...
He's actually played for the first
They've
team.
all pulled on the Scotland
I
strip.
think he got 2 caps, didn't he? Both in friendly matches,
Yeah.
The last one being 5 years ago, so
But
it's not like
how
he
come
was
he
a
never made the
regular.
qualifiers?
He's not really kind of our level.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, okay.
In the nicest possible way.
Sure.
So the story with Jason Cummings, he's played for the first team, and then wasn't getting a look in, and has seen his chance basically at getting another
I've seen it too,
getting an international call up. Harry Suter, so he's obviously, him and John are brothers. His mum is from Australia, but his dad is
Their
Scottish.
Mum.
Their mum is from Australia. Their dad is from Scotland, and they were born in Scotland and lived their life in Scotland. So John,
had he visited Australia? Did he have any connections?
I'm not sure in terms of like their upbringing. I would like to second guess, since his mum's Australian, they've probably visited at some point through their life.
Because Cummins had never visited. That's what I was like.
Yeah,
that's
yeah. But John plays for Scotland, still does. Scored an amazing goal against Denmark when we beat them just last year. Last year.
Yeah, last November.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I remember that game.
And obviously his brothers chose a different side. So yeah, it's a wee bit. That one's a wee bit more of a story because of the two brothers.
Yeah.
It's kind of it's a weird thing though, because it's not actually unusual. Like if you think of the Boateng brothers, Jerome played for Germany, and his brother Kevin Prince played for. Was it Ghana he played for?
Yep, Ghana.
But they were. I think they were both actually German born to Ghanaian parents, so they had that thing. I think it's an interesting thing because we've had a bit of the same crossover as well, even the other way, because Lyndon Dykes, who's Scotland's main international striker now, obviously is Australian born, has Scottish heritage and has played quite a decent part of his career in Scotland
his
as well.
dad's from Aberdeen. But the difference with Lyndon Dykes is he's never played for Australia, so that's why.
Yeah, like he literally had never.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm with you. I didn't feel completely comfortable with it. I can't lie. I haven't seen Suda's tackle against Tunisia. I'm not necessarily against it, but I totally sympathise. Like, because there is a point where it's like, are we turning this into club football again, where we're trying to find the best transfers? I totally agree. Then I think of other examples where it's like, it does make sense in some cases, but like even like what's his name? Grealish, having played for Ireland and then finally gets his England call up and he bounces. Yeah, I mean, just as equally stupid though, I thought the SFA put in Lyndon Dykes as the voiceover before your Nations League game with his Gold Coast accent. I was like, I mean, I know he's Scotland now, I get that, but like that's hardly inspiring me hearing like a Gold Coast accent trying to inspire. Scotland's got enough. Your accent is emotional and it's inspiring. I literally Braveheart. like what? Why was Lyndon Dykes chosen as the? He was like, oh, now this is all about body Scotland.
I don't know. I like that. I like embracing the kind of Scotland can at times, compared to the rest of the world, be very slow at adopting things. You can see it in the way that our national team plays and everything, and where a lot of countries have been embracing, I think, the multicultural aspect and the kind of. This kind of wider world thing for decades. We've very staunchly kind of like denied ourselves embracing that, I think.
Finn, we've been calling up non-Scots for decades. I remember writing an essay in high school in 2004 about why I didn't agree with non-Scots playing for Scotland because it wasn't a club football, it was international football. So that's been 20 years I've been arguing this case.
But look, I tell you what, if they get into a World Cup, maybe that'll change things. What is Scotland's... I feel like it's in a funny place because you've qualified for the first time in so long, and then you've just kind of fallen off straight away again. Obviously, you had a bit of a disastrous tournament.
To be fair, we've done so well recently. The blip came against Ukraine, which was the biggest game in their in 2 years.
Can I just say as well, as someone who like fully got behind you guys, as you've seen in the film, it was so enjoyable to not have to be like emotionally invested in that one and to just watch it. I didn't obviously enjoy you losing, but I was like, oh my God, I forgot how stressful it is watching Scotland. That was actually the most silly game of football I've seen in a long time, the way you played.
The heartbreaking thing is, okay, look, I can excuse, once we got to Euro 2020, I can excuse the fact that we weren't great, but none of our players have played at a tournament before. It was a massive learning curve for them. They are still quite a relatively young squad. I'm quite happy about that. That's fine. I can park that. It's the Ukraine game because the boys have played in a playoff before. They've seen off 2 playoff rounds successfully, had great Nations League campaigns, and they just crumbled in the game that meant the most. When we finally had fans in for a playoff, compared to what happened in 2020, it was the biggest game. Probably, I would say it was a bigger game than the Euros because we didn't have any expectations at the Euros. We had an expectation going into the playoff against Ukraine. Yeah.
Especially after that game against Denmark.
Exactly. That was the best performance I've ever seen us put in.
After as well, the Israel game at home as well, Laura, because was that the month before the Denmark game?
Yeah, that was the one before.
I would say, because I was lucky enough, I was in Scotland at the time, I got to see both the Israel game and the Denmark game. And the Israel game, in terms of excitement, was just the most unbelievable. Like, Scotland don't score last minute winners.
Everyone will see if you ask any Scotland fan what your favourite game at Hampden has been in the last 20 years, I think 90% will say the Israel game.
It was incredible. But then also as well, the Denmark game, it wasn't just like, we've had some decent results against big teams, even in the period where we weren't qualifying for tournaments. Some of them have been smash and grab jobs or whatever. Like, I remember the games against France, oh my goodness, they pummeled us for 90 minutes in the 2008 qualifiers, but we won both of them.
Yeah. Denmark was so different though.
The Denmark, that's the best I've seen a Scotland team play.
Ellie, I don't know if you saw this. Ellie, I don't know if you saw this game.
Oh
my God.
I watched it.
We were literally standing at Hampden. I was literally standing at Hampden making noises like, because I was like, what am I witnessing here? I've never seen us play football like this.
Denmark had won every game of their qualifiers before. That was the first game.
That was the only one they lost. That was a 10th game, and that was the only game they lost in the qualifiers.
So we kind of, in much the same way, it's like if somebody can't open a jar, you give it to somebody else, and then they open it. You say, well, I loosened it for you. That's very much what Scotland did for Australia in the group stage.
I won't lie, it crossed my mind. You know what? Thank you, Scotland, for messing with their confidence, because they haven't been the same since. They were awful. Can I just say that? Actually, France, they had a decent game, but for Denmark to leave the group with 1 point, I can't believe that.
It wasn't to be expected.
It was almost like,
Scotland.
In a way, it's like John Souttar started it and Harry Souttar finished it. Could you say that?
Yeah, there we go.
That's
lovely.
Fair enough. I like that.
I'll take that.
Yeah. Because you made the documentary as well around the Scotland national team for Copa 90, which was kind of following Scotland's journey at Euro 2020, the delayed Euro 2020, but more also as a retrospective just at Scotland's place in world football and everything. Was there anything that really came out when you were making that film that kind of stood out to you about Scottish football or the Scotland national team? And is it something that's kind of left a lasting impression on you or anything since?
Oh, that's a good point. Again, as I said, it's a cliche, but it was like the way Scotland feel about their role in the game and the pride they take in it, I think was something really it just really made me realise the population is not that big, but it's we want people to know that we truly love this game by what, let's say, our the results on the international front say. I think the other thing was the this idea of the self-depreciating, but it's the ownership of it. That's our thing. We love it. We're more than happy to make jokes about it, but don't take that as a fact that we don't love this team. I said, the first game when Schick scored that goal. Actually, no, it was Lyndon Dykes one-on-one after the goal that I walked off because I couldn't watch it anymore because I was that upset. I wasn't. A lot of people said you were doing that for the camera. It's I wasn't. I couldn't take it anymore. We had bet our whole budget on Scotland doing something, and they didn't just lose. That's fine to lose. It was the way that they hit the crossbar. Then Schick scored, and then a one-on-one you couldn't finish. And it was this is ridiculous. It's almost a different sport at this point. How do you all put up with that? And everyone just shook their head, but no one walked. Everyone stayed around anyway and watched. And it's it's what we go through. But again, I think I said this never made the cut, but like I did this monologue at the end. You talk about the love of football and how it's easy to love your team when you're winning things all the time, or you're constantly in the big tournaments. To love your team when you're that bonkers. I don't want to even say bad when it's that ridiculous and heartbreaking. For me, so much more fascinating. And I think that's what I wanted to get across with that final line when I'm like, so is it still shit being Scottish? She's like, nah, it's amazing. It's like, it's just like so mad. So yeah, that's kind of what it's for me, and that's kind of like what I'm trying to get to with Australia. Because I've kind of fell out of love with the Socceroos, not because we weren't as good as the 06 squad. It's just like I just didn't see any players that really inspired me anymore. But I guess what I've found in this latest time is just how I'm inspired for a different reason. The fact we aren't that great and we just grit our teeth and it's us against the world. So I think it's that. It's just like you don't have to be brilliant or successful to be a great football nation. It's something deeper than that, and I think that's what I've learned from them.
So we're recording this slightly ahead of Australia's next game. With them going into the game with Argentina, do you feel like they've got any hope whatsoever of getting through that game?
So I try to explain this to people. I didn't think we had a hope of qualifying. Then we qualified by the skin of our teeth with this keeper doing these dances that everyone forgets was ridiculous till he saved one. The first three, I remember thinking, we are the joke of the footballing world. And then he pulled it off. Fair play to Graham Arnold and Redmayne. They took the risk. It was, you talk about highs or lows, we would never be forgiven for that otherwise. It was embarrassing what he did till he worked out, and then it was legendary. Yeah. And it is. And that's my whole thing. Also, Graham Arnold, he gets so much crap. I'm sorry. A lot of people owe an apology. I've always been on the fence with him because he's not a very nice guy. He's not a very likable guy, but he's brilliant. But so anyway, going back to that, it's like, I didn't think we'd qualify. Okay, we made it, but we're not going to score a goal from open play. We haven't for 8 years. We scored a goal from open play in every group stage match. We've never done that even with the golden generation. Then we've gotten 6 points. We've never gotten 6 points. It's so stupid at this point that it feels like anything's possible now. And everyone's like, yeah, but it's Argentina. Yeah, but it's Australia beating Denmark, 10th place Denmark, scoring goals in open play. People might remember Costa Rica in 2014, Greece in 2004. Yeah. Things at tournaments, every one now and then, a team goes on a run that doesn't make sense. South Korea 2002. This is ridiculous, but why would the ridiculousness stop now? To be honest, I really want Messi to win the World Cup. I think it's deeper than that, and I know how much it means to Argentina. So for me, do I think we can do it? I think anything is possible with Australia at this point. But for me, it's like I'm torn because we've had our moment, but I think this I really want Messi to win the World Cup. So I want Australia to win the World Cup as well. I don't know. I'm lost for words.
So what you're basically saying is you think the winner of the whole tournament's going to come out?
Yes. Yes. Whoever wins this wins the World Cup. In fact, I think we should just stop it at that. Give us a runners-up medal. I'll take that.
Regrets? No, it's good laugh on it. So
I didn't find it funny.
Great stuff in there, Finn and Laura. Really liked that. Can I just get a couple of your thoughts on the World Cup over the last few days?
Just off the back of, obviously we were talking about in the kind of a preview to the Argentina-Australia game, I was able to watch the match. I got up early. We tried to go down to Fed Square, which is the square that Ellie mentioned in the interview, which is kind of like the Melbourne equivalent of George Square. We got down there really early, but not early enough because it was actually already full at I think it would have been about 5:15 in the morning for the 6 a.m. kickoff.
Jeez.
But what was great is because Australia's and Melbourne in particular are so big on sport, they anticipated there being a lot of fans interested in watching the game. So what they did is probably about a 15-minute walk from Fed Square. There's an area where they've got all of the sports stadiums all together. So you've got the MCG, which is the Melbourne Cricket Ground, which hosts AFL and cricket. You've got the Rod Laver Arena, which hosts the tennis, the Australian Open. And then across the street from that, you've got Amy Park, which is like the big football stadium. So they'd opened Amy Park almost as an overflow from Fed Square, which would have, several thousand people there. Put screens around the pitch so that people could overspill into there and watch the game. But it was incredible. It was a 6 a.m. kickoff on a Sunday morning in Melbourne. There were about, rough guesses, 18,000 people overspill that made it into Amy Park. And these scenes were replicated all across the country. So yeah, great scenes in Sydney and Brisbane. It was just, it's nice to be able to enjoy part of that World Cup spectacle, just because I think the kickoff times generally tend to be a bit of a challenge in this part of the world. It's really encouraging to see because football as well I think Ellie made mention it's not the biggest sport by some distance. It's 5th or 6th in the list of sports in Australia. So to see it that well attended and that much interest, and then the fallout from the game's been excellent. Just people so proud in what the team have done. That's been great, and that's probably my most vivid World Cup experience that I've had so far, or I've been able to have. So that was really enjoyable to get that.
Just off the back of that, Finn, a few other SPFL players of note who have made their mark in the World Cup. Daizen Maeda of Celtic scored for Japan, took the lead against Croatia. It finished 1-1, but it was Barisic and Juranovic going through to the next round because they won on 3-1 on penalties. And obviously we have to shout a big shout out to France, folks. Isn't that right?
Lele blue, lele blue.
Yeah, big game on Saturday, isn't it, against England? I don't think there'll be, there may be some listeners who maybe from England that might not like us for that, but there we go. I will be wearing my France shirt proudly on Saturday in the car as I travel back up to Scotland.
Loud and proud.
Is that having swiftly gotten rid of your Senegal shirt that you were wearing at the start of the match?
Well, yes, you know me. I'm a fan of all nations.
Die hard for a couple of days.
Absolutely acceptable. Absolutely. I'm going to be necking a bottle of Bordeaux in the passenger seat on Saturday.
With a baguette for lunch.
Absolutely, exactly. I guess that's it from us then. I think we're all done. It's Challenge Cup this weekend. We'll be back to normality after that. It's going to be a good couple of weeks because it's Christmas. Happy days. And hopefully it's a happy day on Saturday. Thanks to everyone who's joined us on the podcast this week. Vive la France!